minutes before 7 o'clock here on Morning Live. Thank you so much indeed for staying with us. Now, as you may all have seen that this week, yet another financial scandal broke with Steinhoff International furniture retailer losing half of their value on Wednesday after they announced an investigation into accounting irregularities and, of course, the resignation of Chief Executive Markus Jooste the day before. Now, it's estimated that local pension funds could have lost as much as 10 billion rand so far. But joining us for this discussion is Kganki Matabane from the Black Business Council, as well as an accountant who's also an anti-capitalist activist, Khaya Sithole. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much indeed for coming through.
Morning. Morning, Balisa.
Now, let's start with you, Khaya. As I was saying before, just break this whole scenario for us, bring it to our understanding as an ordinary South African as to how it affects me.
Yeah, so Steinhoff is actually a company that owns a lot of the brands that you and I interact with on an ongoing basis. So whether you're talking about a Pep, Ackermans, and all the stores that you and I would have probably grown up using, they actually own those particular stores. So the issue here is that at the corporate level, which is head office, Steinhoff seems to have obviously engaged in some accounting fraud. Now, the problem here, of course, is that the consequence of such a fraud is that the company itself is now at the risk of either having to be closed down or, just really going under. The problem, of course, is that Steinhoff is a big multinational company. It employs over 130,000 people across the world. So the potential loss of jobs there is enormous, first and foremost. But also, more importantly, a lot of people then have invested their money into the business, and now they stand the chance of losing that money. Now, also within the number of people that have invested a lot of money into the Steinhoff business, a lot of the pension funds. Now, of course, pension funds tend to invest in companies with a very long-term view, hoping that these companies are going to be financially sustainable. So when these companies then tend to collapse, then it's the pensioners whose value is actually lost in the conversation.
All right. Now, Kganki, you raised concerns, obviously, as the council, highlighting what you also call unethical and corrupt behavior of an executive committee. But most importantly, you're talking to issues of transformation and diversity, that they don't even have one black person or even one woman within the executive committee.
Yeah, Palesa, as the Black Business Council, we condemn this behavior, and we must call it what it is. We must not dilly-dally around it and call it accounting fraud and this. This behavior is unethical. This behavior is fraud. And we must call it what it is. Mm-hmm. The issue is that the executive committee is very important, even more than the board, because executive committees where decisions are made. And when we look at the executive committee, there's no diversity there, there's no transformation. We're saying if there were black people there, probably they will have raised the issues of saying, let's look at corporate governance. But because it's like a white boys club with one female, they continue with the greed and corruption. So as BBC, we condemn that with the strongest words. It must never happen again, where poor people lose their investments through corruption and unethical behavior. And we need to speak to the PIC, because the PIC is investing in a lot of these companies that are not transformed, that don't have even one black person or woman in excos. This is not the first one. There are other companies that are not transformed where the PIC has invested the money, but they have to do something more. They have to tell these companies that we can't put our money there while you only have white people.
All right. And the issue of money that's at stake here, I made mention of, 10 billion rand. So you were saying that it can even be more than that.
Yeah. So at this stage, when you're speaking specifically about the PIC and other pension funds, it is impossible to quantify how much they have lost. So the PIC is actually the second biggest shareholder in Steinhoff after Christo Wiese. They own over 8% of the stock. So their direct losses is what people have been talking about, to say, look, if you just look at their 8%, they've lost over 12 billion rand just over the past couple of days. But also the PIC invests in other companies, and those companies themselves also invested in Steinhoff. Yeah. So there's a multiplier impact, and it will take a while for anyone to really quantify what the losses are for the PIC. But also for a lot of other pension funds that also have an investment in Steinhoff, the losses themselves are really replicated because it is all interconnected. It's not just one direct investment. That investment also has other investments that are linked to this particular conversation. So it's going to be very difficult for anyone to really know how much they've lost in the short term.
Should pension fund members be worried? Is there anything that can be done in this instance? Can there be sort of a bailout? I mean, we've seen the statement issued by our Finance Minister, Malusi Gigaba, condemning this, of course, and saying that he acknowledges the fact that the FSB will be investigating this matter.
Yeah, I think in reality, there's not much that pension fund members can do because, of course, what you do is that you appoint trustees to manage your pension fund, and then those trustees are given a mandate to invest. And the reality here is that the mandate would have said you may invest in Steinhoff because it's what you'd call, an investment-grade entity. It's got a very good rating from the ratings agencies. So everybody was of the opinion that this is the type of company that you should invest in. So to then imagine that, pension fund members might then switch their mandates overnight is not really practical. So the issue here is that, of course, everybody was of the opinion that this was a company to invest in. And the people that really betrayed everybody's confidence were the insiders. So the issue here is that could we have foreseen it? And from the position of the PIC, probably not.
Yeah, no, certainly. So you are planning to engage the PIC on this matter?
Yes, we are going to engage Steinhoff itself. We're going to engage the PIC. We need to have a roadmap of transformation for the companies that the PIC is invested in to make sure that we are trying and avoid a similar thing happening.
And still on you, Kganki, you also had a breaking story of your own, of course, this week, the suspension of Dr. Baloyi. How far is that matter?
The process is ongoing. As the Secretary General of the BBC is the spokesperson on the issue. The investigation is ongoing, and then we'll come back when the process has been finalized to come and inform the public and the
And Khaya, it looks like there are so many scandals that are actually breaking in the corporate space, especially the auditing and advisory areas this year. So.
Yeah, it's a very bad year to be
looks
in
like
the professional services industry. But as I said in the business day yesterday, remember the starting point here is that we need to acknowledge that corruption at any level is a two-way street. And what you need in order for corruption to thrive is really a very well-cultivated ecosystem. This ecosystem involves bankers, it involves lawyers, it involves accountants, it involves auditors. These are the people that essentially provide a conduit or a gateway for particular transactions to happen. So if one wants to tackle the animal that is corruption, you can't simply limit the conversation to particular individuals because those particular individuals operate within a very well-protected ecosystem itself that needs to be tackled in its entirety if we're ever going to conquer this animal.
All right, no, we'll leave it at that. You make mention of the word corruption, and some people on social media were saying it's not called corruption when it's done by some people. It's called financial mismanagement and so on. Thank you so much to you, both of you gentlemen, for coming through. Thank you so much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks to Khaya Sithole, who's an anti-capitalist activist, and Kganki Matabane from the Black Business Council, talking to us about this important matter in relation to Steinhoff. Let's take an ad break here on Morning Live. As I said earlier on that the better part of the show is live from Molteno Reservoir in Cape Town in the Western Cape. The focus really is the devastating drought situation in that province.